The sun was just beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue across the living room. Teresa stood by the window, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing the edge of her wine glass. She loved this time of dead stillness, the way the world seemed to pause before the night settled in. Everything in their apartment was perfect, just like the life she had with Caleb, or at least, it had been. A soft sound from the hallway caught her attention. Caleb was home. He had just returned from another one of his business trips, the ones that had become more frequent over the past year. She could hear his footsteps as he walked toward the kitchen, the familiar rhythm of his stride making her smile. Caleb always had a way of walking with purpose, like he was constantly on the move, even when he was home. "Hey," Teresa called out as she placed her glass on the counter and walked toward the kitchen. Caleb was at the fridge, pulling out a bottle of water. He looked up at her, his smile warm, but there was something about it that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Hey, you," Caleb replied, his voice laced with exhaustion. He had a perpetual look of fatigue lately, but he tried to hide it. She couldn't help but notice how he avoided her gaze, instead focusing on the water in his hands. "How was the trip?" Teresa asked, her tone casual, but a small knot tightened in her stomach. She had been asking this same question for the past few months, but something about his answers had started to feel off, a little too rehearsed. "It was good. Same old stuff," Caleb replied, shrugging as he twisted the cap off the water bottle. Teresa studied him for a moment, trying to read his expression. He had always been the one who could easily mask his emotions, but tonight there was a distinct distance between them. He used to rush to her, pulling her into a hug, talking about his meetings, but now it was all business. No warmth, no excitement, just nothing. "I was thinking of making dinner," Teresa said, hoping to break the tension. "You've been on the road for a while. It's probably nice to have a home-cooked meal." "That sounds nice," Caleb said absently, still not looking at her. He walked past her, moving toward their bedroom, his shoulders slightly hunched as if weighed down by something invisible. Teresa frowned. Watching him go, she couldn't remember the last time they'd had a real conversation. It was as if they were both living in parallel worlds, existing together without truly connecting. A few hours later, they sat at the dining table, the delicious scent of the meal Teresa had prepared filling the room, but the atmosphere was heavy, suffocating even. Caleb picked at his food, his mind clearly somewhere else, while Teresa tried to keep the conversation flowing. "So, I saw an email from Vicki this morning," Teresa said, trying to sound casual, though her heart was racing. She knew she needed to ask. Caleb froze mid-bite, his fork pausing in the air. His expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened just slightly. It was enough for Teresa to notice. "Vicki." Caleb's voice was low, almost too calm. "What email?" "I don't know," Teresa said, leaning back in her chair, studying him. "I just noticed it in your inbox. You didn't delete it or anything, just thought it was odd. That's all." There was a long silence. Caleb put his fork down slowly, his eyes now locking with hers for the first time that evening. For a moment, she thought he might explain himself, but instead, he just sighed. "It's nothing, Teresa, just business. You know how it is." Teresa raised an eyebrow. Caleb had always been careful with his words, never leaving room for misinterpretation, but this time, something fell off. His answer was too quick, too dismissive. "Business," she echoed, her voice growing quieter. "Caleb, you know that's not what I meant. I don't know what you're implying," Caleb replied, his tone slightly defensive. He shifted in his seat, looking away from her again. Teresa's heart sank. She wanted to press him further, to demand the truth, but the thought of confronting him like this right here, in their home, felt suffocating. Instead, she chose her words carefully. "Why didn't you tell me about her? About Vicki?" Teresa's voice barely rose above a whisper. "I thought you said she was just a past fling." Caleb stood abruptly, pushing his chair back. The sound of it scraping against the floor was like a knife to Teresa's chest. "She is," he said firmly, though the lack of conviction in his voice didn't escape her notice. He turned away from her, pacing to the window. "I don't know why you're making this a bigger deal than it is. There's nothing between us anymore. It's just old emails." Teresa watched him, her breath catching in her throat. She had always trusted him, believed in the promises he'd made, but now, doubt began to creep in. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was being kept from her. "Caleb," she began, her voice trembling, "why are you lying to me?" His shoulders stiffened, but he didn't turn around. Instead, he stared out the window, his back to her. "I'm not lying," he muttered, his voice tight. "There's nothing more to say." But Teresa wasn't convinced. Something inside her had snapped. She couldn't pretend anymore. She couldn't ignore the feeling that Caleb was keeping secrets, and not just small ones. No, these were the kind of secrets that had the power to destroy everything they had built together. Without saying another word, Teresa stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. She walked to their bedroom, her mind racing. She needed to see for herself. She needed the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The next morning, Caleb had already left for work by the time Teresa woke up. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at the untouched cup of coffee in front of her, the quiet hum of the morning doing nothing to calm her racing heart. She couldn't stop thinking about the email, about Vicki. She knew it was dangerous to dig further, but the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. Taking a deep breath, Teresa grabbed Caleb's laptop from the living room, her hands shaking as she opened it. She knew it was wrong. She knew it could ruin everything. But in that moment, she didn't care. The truth was all that mattered. As she logged into his email account, her eyes scanned the inbox. There it was, an email from Vicki, sent just 2 days ago. Her heart pounded in her chest as she clicked it open. Caleb. The email began. I miss you. I know you're busy, but I can't stop thinking about us. I'll always be here for you, no matter what happens with Teresa. The words burned into her mind like a fire, and Teresa felt like the ground had been ripped out from under her. The truth was in front of her now. Caleb wasn't the man she thought he was, and this time, she couldn't ignore it. The perfect illusion of their life had shattered, and she was left standing in the ruins, unsure of what came next. The day after Teresa found the email, everything felt different. The morning light seemed too bright, too piercing, and she couldn't escape the overwhelming sense of dread that hung over her like a storm cloud. Her mind replayed Caleb's words from the night before, the way he had dismissed her concerns with that familiar, practiced calm. There was nothing between him and Vicki, he'd said, just old emails. But Teresa couldn't shake the feeling that something much darker was at play, and deep down, she felt that Caleb's casual dismissal was a lie she couldn't afford to ignore. She had spent the entire night awake, staring at the ceiling as the words of Vicki's email echoed in her mind. I'll always be here for you, no matter what happens with Teresa. That was it. That was the moment when Teresa's entire world began to fracture. The trust she had so carefully built over the years was now a crumbling foundation, one crack after another, waiting for the smallest push to bring it all down. The apartment felt suffocating this morning. Teresa moved through her usual routine, the movements automatic, as if she were a ghost in her own life. She tried to eat breakfast but found herself unable to swallow the food. Caleb had already left for work, but she couldn't stop the gnawing suspicion that he wasn't where he said he was. The more she thought about it, the more she realized she needed answers. That afternoon, Teresa found herself standing in front of the large floor-to-ceiling mirror in the bedroom, her reflection staring back at her, looking somehow foreign. She looked like the same person, but everything about her felt different. There was a brittleness in her eyes now, an edge of uncertainty she couldn't ignore. She wondered when that shift had happened, the moment she stopped being the confident, trusting wife and became this person, consumed by doubts and suspicions. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was a message from her best friend, Claire. Claire, hey, how's everything going? You good? I know Caleb's been away a lot lately. Teresa stared at the screen, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She hadn't told Claire anything about the growing tension in her marriage. She wasn't sure why. Maybe it was because she didn't want to admit to anyone that the perfect life she had built with Caleb was slowly falling apart. Maybe she was afraid of hearing the words out loud, of confronting the truth. But the message had struck a chord. Claire knew, or at least suspected, that something was wrong. The next few weeks had been off. Teresa had tried to downplay it, but her friend had always been too perceptive for her to hide anything for long. Teresa sighed and began to type a reply. Teresa, I'm not sure. Claire, I don't think Caleb's being honest with me. I found something, an email from someone from his past. Her name's Vicki, and I don't know. It just doesn't feel right. She stared at the message before hitting send. Her heart pounded in her chest as she wondered if she was overreacting. After all, Caleb had assured her there was nothing to worry about, but the words in that email still burned in her mind, and no matter how hard she tried to dismiss them, they lingered like a poison in her veins. Later that evening, when Caleb came home, Teresa was waiting for him in the living room. She had spent the entire day considering her options, thinking through the conversation they were about to have. She couldn't live like this anymore, unable to trust him, unable to ignore the growing sense of betrayal. Caleb walked in, his usual smile on his face, but it faltered when he saw the look in Teresa's eyes. There was something cold in her gaze now, something that hadn't been there before. Hey, he said, his voice too bright. How was your day? Sit down. Caleb, Teresa said, her voice steady, though there was a tremor in her chest. We need to talk. Caleb frowned, his eyes narrowing. He could tell something was wrong. What's going on? He asked cautiously, glancing at the couch as if weighing whether or not to sit. Sit, Teresa repeated, her tone firmer now. She wasn't giving him a choice. Reluctantly, Caleb sat down on the couch beside her, his posture stiff. Teresa took a deep breath before speaking. I found the email, she said, her voice quiet but resolute. The one from Vicki. Caleb's face went pale, his lips pressed into a thin line, and he swallowed hard. Teresa watched his every movement, noticing the slight trembling of his hands as he clasped them together in his lap. He was guilty. She could see that now. Teresa, Caleb began, his voice strained. It's really nothing, I swear. It's just, we were friends a long time ago. She's just reaching out, trying to reconnect. Teresa's heart hammered in her chest as she fought to maintain her composure. She could feel the walls closing in around her. Reconnecting, she echoed, her voice laced with disbelief. Caleb, she said she'll always be there for you, no matter what happens with me. That's not just a friend reaching out. That's something else. Caleb's voice cracked, and for the first time, Teresa saw a flicker of panic in his eyes. You don't understand. She means nothing to me now. It's just, she was part of my past, and I didn't think it mattered. No, Teresa interrupted, her voice writhing, filled with a mixture of anger and pain. It matters. You've been hiding it from me. Why? Why couldn't you just tell me the truth? I didn't want to hurt you, Caleb said, his voice barely above a whisper. I thought it was over. I never meant to. You never meant to hurt me. Teresa's words came out in a harsh laugh, bitter and empty. You already hurt me, Caleb. You've been lying to me for God knows how long, and I've been too blind to see it. Caleb reached out for her hand, but Teresa pulled it away, standing up and walking to the window. The city outside seemed so distant, so far removed from the chaos inside her own mind. I can't do this anymore, she said softly, her voice trembling as she spoke the words that had been swirling in her mind all day. I can't keep living in this lie. I need the truth. I need to know if you're still the man I thought you were, or if I've been wasting my time. Caleb stood up too, stepping toward her, but she held up a hand, stopping him. Don't, just don't, Teresa said, her voice cracking now. I need space. I need to figure out what I'm doing. I don't know what the future holds, but I can't keep pretending everything is fine. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Caleb stared at her, his face a mixture of frustration and guilt, but there was nothing he could say that would fix what was broken. Teresa turned away from him and walked toward the bedroom, her heart heavy with the weight of the decision she knew she had to make. The days following the confrontation with Caleb were a blur of emotion. Teresa couldn't seem to escape the haunting image of Vicki's email and the quiet way Caleb had dismissed her concerns. Despite his promises, she couldn't bring herself to believe him. How many lies had he told her over the years, hiding things he thought she would never find out? Teresa had never felt more alone in her marriage than she did now, standing in the house they had once shared so intimately. She had always believed that they were the perfect couple. Caleb, the charming businessman, always so poised and in control, and herself, the supportive wife, the one who made their home a sanctuary. But now she realized how fragile that illusion had been. The cracks had been there all along, hidden beneath the surface, and now they were impossible to ignore. She walked through their apartment that morning, the silence around her pressing down like a weight. Caleb had gone to work early, leaving her to brood in the stillness. Teresa's fingers brushed lightly over the furniture as she passed by, memories flooding her happy moments, anniversaries, vacations. The thought of it made her stomach churn. How could everything feel so wrong now? She stood in front of the full-length mirror in the bedroom, the reflection staring back at her like a stranger. Her face was pale, eyes darkened with exhaustion and a deep, growing sadness. She had never expected to find herself here, questioning everything she thought she knew about Caleb and their life together. By noon, Teresa had retreated into the kitchen, attempting to occupy herself with a simple meal, but her mind was far from the task at hand. Her phone buzzed on the counter, and she glanced at it, recognizing Claire's name. The past few days had been heavy, and she knew she needed to talk to someone who would listen, someone who wouldn't judge. She picked up the phone, her fingers trembling slightly as she typed a response. Teresa, can we meet? I need to talk to you about something. It's about Caleb. Claire, of course. I'll come by your place after work. We'll figure it out. Teresa let out a shaky breath. She needed answers. She needed to hear someone else's perspective, someone who wasn't emotionally invested in her marriage. Maybe, just maybe, Claire would have the clarity she desperately sought. By the time Claire arrived, Teresa had managed to pull herself together, but the tension was palpable. Claire had always been able to read her like an open book, and today was no different. As soon as Claire walked through the door, she studied Teresa for a moment, her brows furrowing with concern. Hey, Claire said softly, closing the door behind her. You look like you've been through a storm. Want to talk about it? Teresa nodded, leading Claire to the couch where they both sat down. The weight of what she was about to reveal felt heavy in her chest, but she knew she couldn't keep it inside any longer. I found an email, Teresa said, her voice steady but with a slight edge of vulnerability. From a woman named Vicki, Caleb's ex, I guess. I don't know what it means, Claire, but the way he's been acting, it's like he is hiding something. Claire's eyes widened, her expression one of disbelief. Wait, Caleb's ex, what did the email say? It was intimate, too intimate. She said she'd always be there for him, no matter what happens with me, Teresa said, her voice breaking slightly, and when I confronted him about it, he just shut me down. He said it was nothing, but I don't know if I can believe him anymore. Claire sat back, her brow furrowed in thought. She had known Caleb for years, and while she wasn't blind to the complexities of their relationship, she had always believed they were a strong couple. But this was different. Have you tried to talk to him again? Claire asked cautiously. I did, Teresa replied, her gaze fixed on her hands, but all I got was more silence, more violence. I can't keep living like this. I don't know what to believe anymore, and I can't keep pretending like everything's okay. I feel like I'm losing him, and I don't even know why. Claire sighed, her tone softening as she reached over and placed a comforting hand on Teresa's. You know, Teresa, sometimes people hide things because they're afraid of the truth coming out. Caleb might be too ashamed to tell you what's really going on, but you deserve the truth. You can't keep living like this. Teresa looked up at her friend, her eyes wet with a mix of fear and determination. What should I do, Claire? Should I confront him again? Should I ask him outright about Vicki? I think you need to give yourself some space to breathe first. Don't make any decisions in the heat of the moment. Claire advised gently. Maybe it's time to think about what you really want. What do you need to feel safe in this relationship? Can Caleb give that to you? Teresa sat in silence, the weight of Claire's words settling into her chest. Could Caleb give her the safety she needed? The reassurance that she wasn't just another pawn in some twisted game? Or was it too late? Had he already chosen Vicki in his heart, even if he hadn't admitted it yet? I don't know, Teresa murmured, her voice barely audible. I want to believe him. I want to believe that he's still the man I married, but I don't know if I can. As the conversation continued, Teresa felt herself torn between the love she still had for Caleb and the growing realization that their marriage was built on fragile ground. The more she thought about it, the more she realized she couldn't continue on this path of uncertainty. She needed answers. She needed to take control of her own life. By the time Claire left, it was late afternoon, and the apartment felt emptier than ever. Caleb was due to come home soon, and Teresa knew she had to make a decision. She couldn't keep waiting for him to change or for him to come to her with the truth. She had to take matters into her own hands. The decision was simple but heartbreaking. She had to confront Caleb once and for all. No more half-truths. No more lies. It was time for the truth, no matter how painful it would be. When Caleb arrived home, Teresa was waiting for him. The moment he stepped through the door, he looked up to find her standing in the living room, her expression serious. But there was something different about the way she carried herself. Teresa, Caleb said, his voice tentative, unsure of what to expect. Sit down, Caleb, she said quietly, her tone unwavering. He glanced at her, sensing the gravity of the moment, and slowly lowered himself into the armchair. The tension in the air was thick, and Caleb could already tell this wasn't going to be another simple conversation. I'm done, Teresa said softly but firmly, her voice steady. I can't keep pretending everything is fine when I know it isn't. I need you to tell me the truth. I need you to explain everything. Caleb's eyes widened in surprise, but there was a flicker of something else in his gaze, guilt, fear. He opened his mouth to speak, but Teresa held up a hand, silencing him. No excuses. I need to hear it all, Caleb, the whole truth. Because right now, I don't know who you are anymore. The words hung in the air, thick and heavy. Caleb looked at her, his face drawn with conflict. He knew, deep down, that things could never go back to the way they were. The moment of reckoning had arrived. The apartment felt colder than usual that evening. Teresa had always loved the way their home seemed to wrap them in warmth, the soft, neutral tones of the furniture, the large windows that bathed the space in golden light, and the scent of vanilla-scented candles that Caleb had always insisted on. But tonight, everything seemed to have lost its luster. The light was dimmer, the shadows in the corners of the room deeper, and the air thick with tension. It was as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for what was to come. Caleb was sitting on the couch, his face taut, his eyes weary, as if he knew the conversation he'd been avoiding was finally upon them. He had never seen Teresa like this before. Her expression hardened, her eyes a mixture of sadness and resolve. It was as though a switch had flipped inside her, and she was no longer the woman who had once stood by him, trusting him implicitly. No, she was a stranger, and for the first time in their relationship, Caleb didn't know how to reach her. Teresa, he began cautiously, his voice softer than usual. Please, just listen to me. I know I've made mistakes, but I didn't want this to happen. I swear, Vicki, it's nothing. She's just someone from my past, and it means nothing now. Teresa stared at him, her gaze cold and unflinching. The words he spoke were the same ones he'd given her before, the ones she had wanted so desperately to believe. But now, they were empty to her. Each word he spoke was another lie he had wrapped around her like a chain, pulling her further into a prison she couldn't escape. You keep saying that, Caleb, she replied, her voice steady but sharp. You keep telling me it's nothing, but I can't pretend anymore. I've seen the way you look at her, the way you talk about her. I've seen the messages, the history you shared with her. It's not nothing, it's everything to you. Caleb flinched at her words, his expression faltering. Teresa, please. No, she cut him off, her voice suddenly louder, filled with the pent-up frustration she'd been hiding for so long. Don't you dare tell me that it's nothing. You're trying to minimize everything, trying to make it seem like I'm the one overreacting. But I can see it now, Caleb. I can see it for what it is. She stood up abruptly, pacing across the living room, her mind racing as her emotions surged. She could feel the years of trust, the years of shared dreams, crumbling beneath her feet. Everything they had built together seemed to be falling apart, and for the first time, She didn't know if she could pick up the pieces. Look at me, she exclaimed, spinning around to face him. You think I don't know what's happening? You think I don't see the way you've been pulling away from me? You've been emotionally checked out for months, and now I know why. It's because you're still holding on to her. You're still holding on to Vicki, and I'm just some placeholder in your life while you wait for her to come back. Caleb's face flushed, and his lips pressed into a thin line. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. His eyes flickered with guilt, regret, but also a tinge of defensiveness. He knew she was right. He had been emotionally distant, but it wasn't just Vicki. It was everything. He hadn't known how to handle the growing distance between them, the unspoken tension that had been creeping into their marriage for months, but he hadn't known how to fix it either. I never meant to hurt you, Caleb said quietly, his voice strained. I never wanted it to be like this. Teresa shook her head, cutting him off again. Stop. I can't keep hearing the same excuses, Caleb. It's too late for apologies. It's too late for explanations. I've given you every chance to come clean, to tell me the truth, but you've kept hiding behind lies. I can't live like this anymore. She paused for a moment, her chest tightening as the words she had been dreading to say for so long finally left her lips. I think we need to take a break, Teresa said, her voice barely above a whisper. I think we need some space. I need to figure out what's best for me and for us. Caleb's face drained of color as if the life had been sucked out of him. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, and he stood up abruptly, his face desperate. Teresa, please don't say that. I love you. I swear, I love you, he pleaded, taking a step toward her. This isn't just about Vicki. It's about us, our marriage. We can work through this. We've been through worse, haven't we? Don't throw away everything we've built. Teresa took a deep breath, swallowing the lump in her throat. She wanted to believe him so badly. She had loved Caleb more than anyone else, had trusted him with everything, her heart, her dreams, her future. But now, she couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling that everything they had was built on a fragile foundation, one that had started to crack long before Vicki had come into the picture. I don't know if I can trust you anymore, she said, her voice trembling as she spoke the words that tore her heart in two. I don't know if I can trust you, Caleb. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. The silence that followed was suffocating. Caleb stood frozen, his gaze flicking to the floor as if the weight of her words had physically knocked him down. Teresa could see the pain in his eyes, the regret that was now too late to fix. But that didn't change anything. She had been the one to suffer for far too long, to sacrifice her own happiness while Caleb had been emotionally absent, to focus on his past to see the present. I need space to think, Teresa repeated softly, though it felt like the heaviest decision of her life. I don't know what I want, Caleb. I don't know if I want to fight for this anymore. Caleb's face contorted with anguish, his voice breaking. I can't lose you, Teresa. I can't lose everything. Please, don't do this. I'm sorry, Teresa whispered, her heart shattering at the raw, desperate look in his eyes. But I have to do this, for me. I need to find myself again. I need to figure out what I want without you, without this relationship. The room felt even emptier after Caleb left. The echo of his footsteps as he walked out the door was the final sound that shattered the silence between them. Teresa remained standing by the window, watching him go, her chest aching with the weight of what she had just done. Her heart wavered, torn between the love she still felt for him and the realization that she couldn't keep sacrificing her own well-being for the sake of a marriage that had become a prison. Caleb's betrayal had broken something inside her, something that might never be fixed. But as she stood there, staring out at the city lights in the distance, she also realized something else. This was the first step toward reclaiming herself, toward finding the woman she had lost in the chaos of their marriage. It was a painful step, but it was necessary. And though her heart was heavy, for the first time in weeks, Teresa felt a flicker of hope. The days following Caleb's departure passed slowly, each one dragging on as Teresa navigated the heavy silence that had filled her once happy home. The apartment that had once been a sanctuary for their shared life now felt like a cold, unwelcoming place. It wasn't just the absence of Caleb's presence, it was the absence of the version of herself that had existed while she had been with him. Everything felt unfamiliar. She spent her days in a haze, trying to avoid the ache that seemed to grow in her chest with every passing moment. She had done the right thing, hadn't she? She had asked for space. She had made the decision to take control of her life again. But why did it feel so wrong? Why did it feel like she was losing a part of herself with every breath? One evening, a few weeks after Caleb left, Teresa found herself at a small cafe on the edge of the city, meeting with Dennis for the first time. He had been a friend of a friend, someone she had known in passing but had never really interacted with before. After Caleb's departure, she found herself craving human connection outside of her broken marriage, someone who didn't come with the weight of the past, someone who didn't have the power to tear her apart. She sat at a corner table, a cup of tea cooling in front of her, her hands wrapped around the porcelain, the warmth of the cup grounding her as she waited. She had been nervous about this meeting. Dennis was attractive, kind, and thoughtful everything Caleb wasn't, in some ways, but he also represented something new, something that didn't feel tied to her heartbreak. When Dennis walked into the cafe, she looked up. He was tall, with short dark hair and an easy smile. He wore a simple navy sweater and jeans. His demeanor relaxed and approachable. He spotted her immediately, his face lighting up as he walked over to her table. "Hey, Teresa," Dennis said, his voice warm with familiarity. "I'm glad we could finally meet. How have you been?" Teresa smiled weakly, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. "Better, I suppose. It's been a strange few weeks, but I'm getting through it." Dennis took a seat, his gaze sympathetic but not overwhelming. "I get it. You've been through a lot, and it's hard to just move on. But I admire your strengths, Teresa. It takes a lot to make the tough decisions you made." She nodded, swirling the tea in her cup as if it would somehow help her collect her thoughts. She wasn't sure how to feel. Part of her was still wrapped up in the pain of her past with Caleb, but another part of her was grateful for this distraction, this opportunity to connect with someone who was kind and non-judgmental. "So, how's everything with you?" Teresa asked, her voice sounding lighter now that they were talking about something else. "How have you been?" Dennis smiled, clearly pleased with the shift in the conversation. "I'm doing well, thanks. I've been keeping busy with work, but it's nice to take a break and meet new people. And I've heard a lot of good things about you from Sarah. She's been talking about you non-stop ever since you two met." Teresa chuckled softly, her eyes brightening at the mention of her friend Sarah. "She does that. She's a bit of a matchmaker, always trying to set me up with someone. I'm sure you know her type." Dennis grinned. "Oh, absolutely. But I'm glad she did. It's been nice talking to you so far." There was a moment of silence between them, but it wasn't awkward. Teresa could feel the ease of their conversation, the way it flowed without the tension that she had grown accustomed to when talking to Caleb. She realized, for the first time in a long while, that she could breathe again. "You know," Dennis said thoughtfully, his gaze fixed on her, "I know this isn't easy, but you've got a lot of people who care about you, and you don't have to go through this alone." Teresa looked up, meeting his eyes. There was sincerity there, in the way he spoke, in the way he was offering her his support without pushing her. It was exactly what she needed, but she wasn't sure if she was ready to lean on someone else just yet. "I appreciate that, Dennis," Teresa said, her voice soft. "I think I just need some time to figure things out on my own. You know, I've been so wrapped up in my past that I've forgotten what it feels like to just be myself." Dennis nodded, his expression understanding. "Of course, you should take all the time you need, but I'm here for you whenever you need someone to talk to or just hang out with." Teresa smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something new, something real. She was slowly beginning to realize that maybe her story wasn't over, and maybe there was more to life than the pain of the past. As the evening wore on, they talked more, about everything and nothing. It felt good, normal even, to have a conversation that wasn't fraught with hidden truths and unspoken tension. When it was time to leave, Dennis walked her to her car. His presence offered a sense of calm she hadn't known in weeks. "Thanks for tonight, Teresa," Dennis said, his voice gentle. "I'm glad we could do this. I hope you're feeling a little bit better." "Sham," Teresa replied, her lips curving into a genuine smile. "I really am." As she got into her car and drove home, she felt a strange sense of peace wash over her. She wasn't fully healed, and she knew there was still much to process. But tonight had reminded her of something important, that she was still worthy of happiness, of connection, of new experiences. Caleb wasn't her whole world, and as much as it pained her to admit it, she had the power to build a new life for herself. The next few days were a blur of reflection and quiet moments of clarity. Teresa found herself spending more time outside the apartment, going for long walks, and reconnecting with old friends. She still had moments of doubt, moments when Caleb's absence felt unbearable, but they were becoming fewer. The memories of their time together, while painful, no longer had the same suffocating hold on her. Dennis continued to be a comforting presence in her life. They met for coffee a couple of times, and he would send her texts to check in, offering his support without ever pressuring her. She had begun to look forward to their meetings, to the easy camaraderie they shared, but she knew she had to be careful. She wasn't ready to jump into anything new. Not yet. She needed time to rebuild herself, to remember who she was before Caleb had come into her life. Still, the feeling that something was shifting inside her was undeniable. She was starting to feel like her old self again, or at least, a version of her that had been buried for far too long. The woman who had dreams of her own. The woman who had passions and a sense of self-worth that didn't revolve around a man's affection. Later that week, Caleb reached out to her. He had sent a simple message, asking to meet for dinner to talk. Teresa had been expecting this moment. She knew Caleb wouldn't just disappear, that he would eventually try to re-enter her life in some way, shape, or form. But she wasn't sure she was ready to face him yet. She sat with her phone in her hands, staring at the message for a long time. Her heart fluttered in her chest, her emotions still raw. But for the first time in a while, she felt something different. She felt empowered. She put the phone down, took a deep breath, and then replied, Teresa, I think it's time we both move on. Caleb, it's over. As she pressed send, a wave of finality washed over her. This was it. She was done. The door to her past had closed, and she was finally free to step forward into her future. The rain was falling steadily outside the cafe, its rhythmic tapping against the windows a soft, almost comforting sound. Teresa sat in a corner booth, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee. The warmth of the drink did little to ease the cold that had settled in her chest. It was the day she had been dreading for weeks, the day she would finally see Caleb again. He had insisted on meeting, wanting to talk, wanting closer. Part of her wondered if he was hoping for more, but she had already made up her mind. She wasn't going back. The door to the cafe swung open, and Caleb stepped inside. Teresa's breath hitched at the sight of him, but she quickly regained her composure. He hadn't changed much, his dark hair still messy in that effortlessly charming way, his suit well tailored as usual. But the man who had walked through the door wasn't the one she had married. That man, the one who had promised her forever, was long gone. In his place was someone more distant, someone she barely recognized. He spotted her immediately and made his way over, his eyes searching her face with an intensity that made her uneasy. Teresa, Caleb said, his voice soft, almost pleading, you look good. I've missed you. She forced a smile, gesturing to the seat across from her. Thank you. You look well, too. He sat down, his posture rigid, as if unsure how to approach this conversation. Teresa could feel the weight of the years they had spent together pressing down on her chest, but she held her ground. She had made this decision. She was stronger now. The silence between them was heavy, thick with unsaid words and unspoken pain. Caleb was the first to break it. I've been thinking a lot about us, he began, his gaze not quite meeting hers, about everything that happened. I know I messed up, Teresa. I know I hurt you, and I'll never forgive myself for that. But I still love you. I need you to know that. Teresa felt a wave of bitterness rise in her chest. She had heard this so many times before. The apologies, the promises, the vows to change. But in the end, nothing had ever really changed. Nothing had been enough. I don't need to hear that, Caleb, she said, her voice steady. I've heard it all before. I've spent years waiting for you to be the man I needed, for you to choose me over everything else. But I'm done waiting. I've been waiting for you for so long that I forgot what it felt like to choose myself. Caleb's face softened, his brow furrowing in confusion. What are you saying? Are you saying it's over? For good? Yes, Teresa replied firmly. It's over. I'm not going to keep living in the past. I'm moving forward with my life, and I'm not looking back. The words stung, but they were true. She could feel the finality of them, the closure that she had been seeking all this time. The man in front of her wasn't the person she had once loved. He was a stranger now, someone who had betrayed her trust, broken her heart, and shattered their future, and she couldn't go back to that. Caleb reached for her hand across the table, but Teresa quickly pulled it away. The action firm and deliberate. Please, she said, her voice low but unwavering. Don't do that. Don't try to pull me back into something I've already walked away from. I need you to understand. I can't keep living in this cycle. I've given you more chances than I should have, but I'm done. Caleb's face hardened for a moment, a flash of anger crossing his features. You think this is easy for me? You think I haven't been hurting too? You're the one who left me, Teresa. You're the one who decided to give up on us. I didn't give up on us, Teresa replied, her voice rising slightly. I gave up on someone who didn't care about me enough to fight for us. I gave up on a marriage that was built on lies and deceit. I gave up because I had to, and I'm not sorry for that. There was a long pause, the air between them thick with tension. Caleb looked at her for a long moment, his eyes searching, as if trying to find the woman he had once known. But Teresa wasn't that woman anymore. She had changed. She had to change. Is there any chance at all that we can fix this? Caleb asked, his voice low, almost desperate. Teresa shook her head slowly. No, Caleb, I've tried to fix it for so long, but I can't fix something that's beyond repair, and I can't keep living like this. The silence stretched on, and for the first time, Caleb seemed to realize the weight of what she was saying. His eyes flicked to the side, and he took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. I see, he said quietly. I guess I've lost you for good, haven't I? Teresa felt a pang in her chest, but it was quickly replaced by a sense of relief. She had made the right decision. She had chosen herself. Yes, she said softly. You've lost me. But this time, I'm not looking back. The rest of the conversation was brief, full of the awkward remnants of a relationship that had run its course. Caleb apologized once more, but it was clear that neither of them could change the past. They spoke briefly about their separation, the logistics of it, and the shared responsibility of moving on. But the emotional weight that had once held them together was no longer there. Caleb stood up to leave, his shoulders slumped, the realization of what he had lost sinking in. He didn't say goodbye. Teresa stayed at the table for a while, her hands still gripping the mug of coffee as she stared out the window, watching the rain fall harder, as if the world outside understood the gravity of the moment. Later that night, as she arrived home to her empty apartment, Teresa felt a strange sense of peace. It was over. Caleb was part of her past now, and she was finally free. She walked into her bedroom and stood in front of the mirror, taking in the reflection of the woman she had become. She had changed. She was stronger, more self-aware, and ready to move forward. And then, her phone buzzed. It was Dennis. Dennis, I was thinking about you. How's everything going with Caleb? Teresa smiled at the message, a warmth blooming in her chest. Dennis had been a steady presence in her life, someone who had given her space to heal, to grow. Teresa, it's over. For good this time. I'm moving on. The reply came quickly. Dennis, I'm really glad to hear that. I'm here for you, always. Teresa took a deep breath and set her phone down. She wasn't sure what the future would bring, but she was finally ready to embrace it. The weight of the past had lifted, and with it, she could see the possibility of a future filled with new beginnings, with Dennis, with herself. As she turned off the lights and lay down in bed, Teresa allowed herself a moment of peace. She had closed one chapter of her life. Now, it was time to start writing the next.